It's great to speak with you today. Can I just start by asking how proud you are of the club swimmers who compete in Tokyo, but also the Para GB swimmers as a whole?
Yeah, it's been great from a personal point of view from Northampton Swimming Club, and as me as a coach, it's great to see our athletes selected to go and compete on the biggest stage. And as a club, we're really proud of every athlete that we coach, from our para swimmers to our non-para swimmers, and at all different levels. And then to see Paralympics GB finally out in Tokyo racing today is just amazing. The team's got off to a good start with swimmers making finals this morning, and we've picked up a couple of medals already. We've still a couple of swimmers racing later on this morning. So very excited and just glad that the Paralympics is finally happening.
And just speaking, obviously, before the games, just how difficult was the pandemic in your preparation? Were there kind of any times in particular, obviously with the closure of the pools for such a long period, where things got a bit too much?
Yeah, so with everybody during the pandemic, it created problems, and there's far worse things going on in the world at the moment than people not being able to access swimming pools or gym facilities. But yeah, we lost access to the pools during the first lockdown due to the government guidance about not being able to be in sort of crowded places and having to restrict that. But then after the first lockdown, we were able to get back into the pool, and during the lockdowns we had to think outside the box like everybody. So for us, the main thing was to keep engaged with our members and just to check in each week. So we organized different activities utilizing Zoom. We did online workouts, we did cooking classes, we had team meetings, we did quizzes just to keep engaged. And then we were fortunate enough to be back in the pool. It was just over a year ago now. It was the end of July going into August where the pools reopened. So we were able to swim through July, August, into September and October. And then the lockdown came again, didn't it? Around about December going into the new year. And at that point, the athletes that are in Tokyo now, because they're on British swimming world-class programs, they were given special dispensation to swim during the last lockdown. So Will Perry, Maisie Summers-Newton, Ellie Robinson, Zara Maluli, plus Edward Mildred, Jackson O'Rourke, Betsy Wizard, some of our other athletes were allowed to swim, which was good. And in Northampton, we actually hosted a elite training centre. So we had athletes coming in from all around the country accessing training time. So the sport of swimming, yeah, we're competitive when we go and race at competitions, but it's really good as a sort of sporting community that myself and Jackie were able to help athletes from other programs. So there are athletes that came into the program that went on to swim at the Olympics and swam at a European junior level this year. So without accessing that facility during the lockdown, a number of these athletes perhaps wouldn't have been on the teams that they've been successful in getting on this year.
And how did the athletes cope in terms of, were there any points where they came to you and said they were really struggling with how the pandemic was affecting everything?
I'll be honest, a lot of our athletes are very resilient, and they're very open, and me and the coaches were always there to listen and help and advise. But they're a good bunch, they're hardworking. We were honest up front and said, look, this is going to be a very challenging time for everybody, as we now know that it was. But like I say, they're very resilient, and they very able to put things into perspective. And yeah, we weren't able to access the pool, but we did other things. Like they were going out on their bikes and walking more, and like doing our online activities, and they coped really well.
And just having met Ellie and Maisie myself, as well as the other swimmers you coach, they're great characters and personalities around the pool. How important is it to have these type of role models for the younger swimmers who dream of competing at the games?
I think it's vitally important. You've seen a lot in the news recently about athletes struggling with maybe issues away from their sort of sports. And it should be a fun thing. Everybody starts playing sport at a young age purely to go and have fun and do something to excel in and enjoy. And it's really important that you keep that. And yeah, you'll have athletes get into the Paralympics or the Olympics or European football championships, World Cups, World Championships, Commonwealth Games, whatever it is. But I think it's really important to maintain that fun element. And for athletes they need to remember why they started, and to not put too much pressure on themselves. And like you say, our athletes are very down to earth, that they're very driven, they're competitive, they work hard, and they have to have that mentality. Right, you're turning up for a practice session or a gym session or a competition, and you're blinkered, you're fully focused on that session. However, when the session's finished or just before the session, that's the time to have a chat, be with your teammates, play some games, take the mick out of each other, talk about what you've done at school, what you're doing at the weekend, because they're people, they're not robots. I think sometimes people forget that athletes, they're people, and yeah, the amount of coverage that people get, you just have to remember that they're people first, and they're good at what they do, and then when they get to a level, like I can't reiterate enough the importance of having fun and enjoying what you're doing.
And just alluding to saying that they're robots, kind of like not people. How can events like the Games in Tokyo change the treatment of disabled people in society?
I think it shows that they're not different. I know when I was growing up, where perhaps para sport and people with impairments or disabilities, they were sometimes treated differently. Even at school, they would perhaps be with a different teacher or in a different classroom or in a different sort of area of the school, whereas that everybody can be fully integrated. So at Northampton Swimming Club, all of our athletes, as soon as they're at a level and they're able to do so, they're fully integrated. So all of our para athletes swim in our Performance 1 squad, and they're swimming with other athletes that haven't got impairments. But it's really important because for the people without impairments, they can see what people with impairments have to go through on a daily basis. And it's also good for those para athletes to be pushed on by somebody else. So there's always somebody better than you. There's always someone coming up behind you, chasing you. So you've got to have that competitiveness and willingness to keep improving. And I think Channel 4 have done a great job at promoting the Paralympics, and they're household names now, aren't they? You've got Johnny Peacock, Kadina Cox, Ellie Simmons, to name a few athletes, Sarah Story, who's going to hopefully become the most successful Paralympic athlete ever. And they're household names alongside Adam Peaty and Usain Bolt and Michael Phelps and Simone Biles and Sir Steve Redgrave now, and they're at the same level, aren't they? Which is great.
Just touching on that, do you feel like prejudice is still a big or rising issue for people with disabilities?
I guess that probably is. I haven't seen that firsthand myself. I've only ever seen positive experiences for our athletes. You get the people online and the trolls and things that perhaps say things, but they're just stupid, aren't they? From my personal experience and from our swimmers at a club, it's always been positive. And the fact that people with impairments are fully integrated into our club, but then especially for young children, it's not any different, and it shouldn't be any different because they're the same. They just might have their arm missing or not be able to see fully, or like the S6s that are short stature, or like if you look at Zara, you perhaps wouldn't see that she's got a physical impairment, but when you see her swimming, you can see the differences because she's got a form of cerebral palsy. You can see she's weak down the right side of her body, but everybody's the same. And the fact that people can now have those opportunities to compete is only a good thing.
And Ellie herself was triumphant in Rio, winning gold in the S6 50-meter butterfly. From your experience coaching her, how does she strike the balance of becoming an experienced athlete entering her second games, but also being able to use her platform to create change, which I've seen so myself?
Yep. So Ellie did really well in Rio. She only just turned 15 in Rio, so she's one of the, I think she was the second youngest person on that team, but she's a big character, and I think she's done a lot of good things for para sport. She's got a lot of followers on social media, and she's promoted the sport really well. Since Rio, she went on to win a gold at the Commonwealth Games, and she's won a European gold and a world silver. So she's got medals from each of the major games and championships. And like with anything, you can always inspire people. So I know that Ellie was inspired by London alongside Will and Maisie and Zara, and Ellie obviously went to Rio 5 years ago, and then all the other athletes that were inspired by London, they're now on that team 9 years later. And it's an important part of being an athlete, and it's inspiring that next generation. I'm sure you grew up, like, are you into football or rugby, and you have your heroes, don't you? You want to be like them, and it's the same in every sport. And for athletes, they're up here on the telly, and people say, oh, I want to be like Ellie Robinson, I want to be like Maisie Summers-Newton, I want to be like Lewis Hamilton, whoever it is. And it's really important to be, as an athlete, inspiring that next generation.
What type of impact do you think Tokyo can have on the grassroots level of disability sport, and in particular swimming?
I think it's going to have a major impact. We've already been in discussions as a club with some of the organisations that we work with in Northampton and Northamptonshire. So Graham Wilson at Northamptonshire Sport, he's a great person within that organisation. He helps identify young children, and we help set up sort of taster days. So when the Paralympics is all over, we're going to be setting up days where people could come and visit the swimming club, hopefully meet our athletes, talk to them, be inspired by them, and get them into sport. And they may not necessarily go into swimming, they might go into athletics, or I've seen there's badminton and now taekwondo, some of the newer sports, whatever sport it is. So and each year, I think London really raised the bar, didn't it, with the Olympics, but even more with the Paralympics. And then as every Olympic and Paralympic cycle, it's going to get bigger and bigger, and just get more people into sport. Not everybody's going to go to the Olympics, not everybody's going to go to the Paralympics, but if it helps keep people off the streets and out of trouble and fit and healthy and doing something with their lives, it's going to be positive.
And what would you say your expectation of these games are as a whole, from what you want the athletes to achieve as their coach, and how will it be different kind of feel because of the pandemic, meaning families and friends can't be out there?
As a club and as coaches and athletes, obviously we'll have our own targets, and we don't really discuss those in public. They'll have their targets that they want to achieve, but it's really, like I mentioned, it's go and enjoy the experience, but you're not there for a free ride just to get the tracksuit and be a Paralympian. They've got a job to do, and they're going to go and do their best. As long as they're working all their processes, all the basics that they've done on a weekly and daily basis, and enjoy the experience, go and do their best. And you can't control what anybody else is doing. You can only control what you're doing. So control the controllables, do your best, and give it everything.
And just touching on William Perry, he's making his first Paralympic appearance tomorrow. Can you describe the journey he's been on to get here, and how, as a club, you're able to keep generating para-GB athletes?
Well, for Will Perry, he's one of the athletes that perhaps benefited from the postponement of the games from last year. If the games had gone as scheduled last year, he perhaps wouldn't have been on the team, but having an extra year to prepare and to get into his sport a bit more has really helped him. So he's come through a lot later. He's our oldest Paralympian on the team. He's just turned 21, but he's the one with the least amount of experience. So all the girls, they've raced at Europeans, Worlds. Ellie's been to Commonwealths, and Ellie's been to Paralympics. But Will, his only sort of international event was the European Championships in May, and he didn't actually qualify for the team until July. So up until 6 weeks ago, he wasn't on the team. So his sort of improvement curve has been like skyrocketed over the last few weeks, and he's just an example of somebody. You stick at it, you work hard, and there's always chances for people to come through later. Everybody has a different journey. You have somebody like Ellie Simmonds, who won her first Paralympic gold at age 13 and is now going into her fourth Paralympic Games. And Will Perry is very, very novice. He's still got a lot to learn, but he's could have a bright future ahead of him as well.
And just speaking about Channel 4 and the broadcasting they've been doing since obviously the London 2012 Games, how important is that to ensure the growth of disability sport continues?
I think it's really important. I read on the news yesterday that I think Channel 4 is publicly owned, isn't it, but privately funded, and if there's talk that maybe some of that funding is going to go, and the director, I think it was director of Channel 4, don't quote me on that, he said if that happens, then they won't have the disposable income to do what they're currently doing. And I think that Channel 4, it's sort of obviously you got the main coverage on the telly, but like the last leg, you got people there, and it's normalizes it that you can sort of laugh and joke and be with them and not be afraid to say things. I know that they perhaps say some controversial things sometimes, but they're humans, aren't they? They're not any different. So you don't need to treat them any different. Obviously, you need to treat people with respect, but you can sort of, it's normal, isn't it?
And just finally, looking ahead to Paris in 3 years' time, what direction do you see disability sport heading in, and what needs to be done to continue the development we've seen since the Games in 2012?
I think it's just really important that at grassroots level, there are opportunities for everybody, whether it's Paralympic sport or Olympic sport, everybody to have the opportunities and just the growth of the sport. Obviously, things are going to be difficult moving forwards, coming out of the pandemic and maybe reduced funding. And as clubs, it's really important that local clubs get that help and support as much as possible, because that's where everybody starts. All these athletes that are winning lots of medals in a variety of sports at the Olympics, for example, they're perhaps in national centres and they're funded by the lottery. But as clubs, we don't get any funding. We have to generate our own income through membership. So support for local clubs is key, because Adam Peaty, he started off at, I think it was Utoxeter, then moved to City of Derby, and now is at the Loughborough Training Centre. And investment in small clubs and grassroots clubs, and because that's where it all starts.